Good morning. I'd like to begin by first giving honor to God for allowing me to be part of such a gracious and compassionate church body. Whew. I'd also like to, thank you. I'd also like to thank Pastor Tom in his absence for allowing me to speak with you all today, and thank the many people who are both present in the sanctuary and online for offering me support and encouragement leading up to today. I'd like to thank my family, especially my brother Omari. My car died actually this morning, and he came and sat with the car, and then my friend Denise, who came and picked me and my third twin Robert up so that we could be here today. So I'm just very grateful for all the love and support that you all have given me, and thank you, Hills, for being here. Today, we will be talking about the rebellious love of Jesus and how modeling this type of love can transform your world. We customarily define a rebel as either a person who does not like rules or authority and shows this by behaving differently from most people in society, or a person who is opposed to the political system in their country and tries to change it using force. While neither of these definitions seems to accurately define Jesus, in our text for today, we see Jesus demonstrating his disapproval of the social norms of his culture by showing unparalleled compassion, mercy, and favor to everyone around him without regard for social class, status, or gender. Specifically, Jesus models rebellious love and compassion by performing miracles of physical and emotional healing, taking private time to pray and discern God's will, and bringing the good news of God's unconditional love and redemption to all the small villages and towns throughout Galilee. First, let's consider that Jesus' rebellious love includes all people and does not discriminate based on race, social status, gender, age, or sexual orientation. Our story opens in the town of Capernaum, which was known as the Galilee of the Gentiles, and is where Jesus spent a large part of his public ministry. This was rebellious because Jesus was born to Jewish parents and was therefore familiar with the Jewish social customs and expectations that would suggest he not spend so much time in a town run by Gentiles instead of Jews. Verses 32 through 34 read, "That evening at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed by demons. Gathered around the door was the whole city. This included men, women, children, and people of various ethnicities and social statuses. And Jesus cured those who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons." It's important to note that in doing this, Jesus heals physical and emotional ailments. In addition, the Bible does not say that Jesus only healed men, Jewish people, or middle-class people. It says whoever was brought to him, he healed. And that is how we are supposed to model Christ's love to others. Jesus performing miracles among this population was also a rebellious concept because Galilee was in the Roman Empire. And in the Roman Empire, your social status was determined by birth. If you were born a slave and then freed, or born poor and then became wealthy, that did not change your social status. You were always treated as a slave or poor in public and private places, regardless of whether your external circumstances changed. But Jesus, despite these social customs, offered healing to everyone. Today, we can show that kind of rebellious love to others by using whatever we have in our possession to bring others compassion and hope. When considering the modern day context of this principle, I am reminded of Tracy Chapman's song, "Mountain O' Things," when she speaks about how classism can lead to hopelessness. The song begins with the lyrics, "The life I've always wanted, I guess I'll never have. I'll be working for somebody else until I'm in my grave. I'll be dreaming of a life of ease and mountains, oh things." For me, that statement rings of hopelessness and sadness that mirrors what many of the people in the Roman Empire may have felt during Jesus' time, and what many people in Baltimore and across America feel today. The song continues, "Sweet lazy life, champagne and caviar. Hope you come and find me, 'cause you know who we are. Those who deserve the best in life and know what money's worth. and those whose sole misfortune is having mountains of nothing at birth. Consume more than you need. This is the dream. Make you pauper or make you queen. I won't die lonely. I'll have it all prearranged. A grave that's deep and wide enough for me and all my mountains of things. In contrast to this type of thinking, like Jesus, we can make a rebellious difference in the lives of those whose sole misfortune is being poor by demonstrating an equalizing love for everyone we meet, regardless of socioeconomic, gender, or ethnic status. In other words, demonstrating rebellious love like Jesus means daring to love those whose opinions and culture are different from our own. It means seeing differences through the eyes of a child's hopeful curiosity, rather than through the eyes of a fearful adult who may be more concerned with maintaining their own status quo and lifestyle privileges than making sure the person next to them is given the same or similar opportunities to thrive and succeed. Making choices that demonstrate compassion and empathy for all humans is loving rebelliously like Jesus. In other words, if we want to change the things in society that we know don't reflect the inclusive love of Christ, then we have to behave differently than most people around us. And sometimes that means illuminating dark thoughts and harmful speech about race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and gender choices by engaging in nonviolent resistance tactics. However, in order to do this effectively, we must be clear that we are hearing from God so that we are responding with God's wisdom and grace when acting as agents of change, similar to how Jesus shows rebellious love in our text today, after demonstrating equalizing love when he takes time to be alone with God to pray and then discern his next move. Verse 35 reads, "In the morning, while it was still very dark, Jesus got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed." Here we see how Jesus' rebellious love often resulted in him deliberately going to a place without other humans to communicate with God. And while the text doesn't directly state this, Jesus' actions suggest that regularly spending time communicating with God in a space where you are not distracted by human voices is essential to clearly discerning God's next step in your journey to model Christ's unconditional love and compassion in daily life. Jesus comes out of his private time with God with a sense of renewed vigor and determination to carry out the mission he stated in Mark chapter 1, verse 15. He states that the time of his ministry is fulfilled and the kingdom of God has come near through Jesus. We are to repent and believe in the good news. Furthermore, after spending time alone with God, in verse 38, Jesus declares to the disciples that they must act in ways that defy cultural norms of xenophobia, which is the extreme dislike or fear of foreigners and their customs. They must do this by going into the neighboring Galilean towns so that Jesus can proclaim the message there also, for that is what he came to do. Some wisdom would say that Jesus' connection to Galilee is significant because many Jewish people in the Roman Empire viewed Galileans as being uneducated and of questionable ancestry. Galileans also had a reputation for being rebels and agitators because they often participated in protests and uprisings against the Roman Empire. And openly aligning yourself with those who spoke against the Roman government was punishable by death. Despite this, the rebellious love of Jesus determined that these outcasts, these Galileans, were to be included in the circle of God's love by offering the message of the good news, and Jesus demonstrating this good news by performing miraculous acts of physical and spiritual healing. The good news Jesus is referring to in these verses is essentially a message about God's redemptive love for all mankind. The author, Amber McBride, provides a powerful example of the transformative power of actively working against xenophobia with the weapon of Christ's love in her book, Gone Wolf. This is a fictional narrative about what would happen if America was attacked by a xenovirus that resulted in a second civil war and culminated in Black people being re-enslaved. When describing how the xenovirus led to the enslavement of Black Americans, the author writes that the symptoms of the xenovirus included cognitive reactions that made certain people hate and distrust their neighbors. It was as if the virus blurred people's vision, making them hate everything and everyone different. In the novel, in order to fight against the systemic inequalities that were caused by the xenovirus, the character Truth Tubman declares that instead of reacting in hopelessness, fear, and despair, we have to stand up because words are important and words change the world. Jesus knew this, and that is why he made sure his message was heard in spaces that were considered unorthodox and unnecessary by most Roman citizens. The third way of Jesus demonstrates rebellious love in this passage is in the last part of our text for today, when he heals a man with the skin disease, which many scholars believe was a form of leprosy. The Greek word that is traditionally translated as leprosy in the Gospels was used to describe various skin diseases. These diseases were incurable and highly contagious. So in order to limit exposure to them, the Jewish culture had developed many laws and social systems about how to treat people who had these diseases. And Jesus, touching this man, disregarded all those traditions and precautions. This is also an example of how Jesus' rebellious love was responsive and specifically addressed the stated concern. In considering the first two principles of Jesus' rebellious love, number one, that the rebellious love of Jesus includes all people and does not discriminate based on race, social status, sexual orientation, gender, or age. And number two, that the rebellious love of Jesus takes time to be alone with God to pray and discern your next move. This last part of our text for today shows us that the third component of demonstrating the rebellious love of Christ is to trust and know that he will act in specific ways to heal our physical and emotional burdens. Considering these 3 points, this man's leprosy can be viewed by us today as a symbol of any burden, social ill, or dis-ease you came to church burdened with today. What are you dealing with that seems so insurmountable and complex that you have decided that even Jesus has forgotten about you and has neglected your specific desire, prayer, or situation? According to our text, Jesus cares about and will actively work to improve any physical or emotional burden we encounter. But first, as Truth Tubman suggested in the book Gone Wolf, we must believe that words are important and words change the world in order to act with the courage to seek help from the only one who can make all things well. In verse 40, the person with the skin disease kneels before Jesus, meaning this person trusts that Jesus has the power to improve his situation, and says to the Lord, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." The Bible goes on to tell us that, moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand, touched the person kneeling before him, and said to them, "I am willing, be made clean." This passage is a reminder that Jesus wants us all to remember God is willing to heal, to love, and to redeem even our deepest and most hurtful places. Just like Jesus did in Mark chapter 1 through miraculous acts of physical and emotional healing. When we demonstrate rebellious love, God will transform our world in ways that inspire us to defy social protocols and expectations in order to more effectively use our resources to create a better future for everyone we have the privilege to encounter. For, as the cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So my hope for all of us today is that we will begin to seek ways to model the rebellious love of Christ, and through these actions, declare loudly and with all sincerity to the world, God bless everyone, no exceptions.